Thank you, Chairwoman Wagner and Ranking Member Sherman, and thank you to each of the witnesses for your testimony and for speaking with us today. One of my top priorities as a member of this committee is to protect retail investors and ensure that my constituents in Southern Indiana are given the same financial opportunities and the level of priority as investors in any other part of the country. When I hear from people back home, a constant point of concern is for the security of their wallets, the ability to save for retirement, provide for their families, and secure their futures. As my colleagues have discussed, the current system has lost sight of these priorities. Our capital markets and the soundness of our financial system have long been among our greatest strengths, but as political agendas and unrelated social issues drive the focus elsewhere, everyday Americans are forced to bear the cost of diminished returns and lost financial security. As a member of the ESG working group and this committee, I'm glad we're now turning our attention to this issue. There's no reason why the well-being of everyday investors should take a back seat to politics over other unrelated issues. Mr. Nettram, you submitted a comment letter to the SEC back on September 12, 2022 regarding their proposed amendments on Rule 14a-8. As you stated in your letter, these proposals, quote, will ultimately force companies and shareholders to consider proposals anytime an activist demands, irrespective of whether the company has already taken steps to address the underlying issue or whether shareholders have already considered and rejected or are currently considering a similar proposal. Needless to say, that's very concerning. As the current system works, activists can persistently resubmit similar proposals year after year, despite being previously rejected by a majority of the shareholders. By moving forward with this proposal, the SEC would place the interest of activists even higher than the well-being of their investors. Mr. Nettram, do you think it's fair for companies to have to continuously invest resources in fighting activist proposals that clearly do not benefit the company, its shareholders, especially when proposals have been rejected in previous years?
Absolutely not. When a broad majority of shareholders have rejected a proposal, it is absolutely unfair for companies to have to continually reassess and reengage with the activists on those ideas.
And are there ways that we can reform this process, the no action process, so that we can prevent these duplicative problems?
I think Congress has a real role to play here in reining in the SEC and directing them on a path that is more in line with the interest of Main Street investors.
That's certainly part of the reasons why we're here today, to really consider what package of bills we may be moving forward to address some of these issues. I'm pleased to be leading an initiative that will address the issue. My bill will nullify this burdensome and unnecessary SEC proposal from taking place, saving shareholders both time and money and ensuring that the interests of a small number of activists don't take priority over our everyday investors. Mr. Nettram, the SEC's required mandate includes protecting investors, facilitating capital formation, and promoting efficient markets. How does the dominance of social and policy issues in corporate annual meetings conflict with those objectives?
The SEC can fulfill its mission to protect investors and support capital formation by allowing companies to really focus on long-term value creation. That's where their focus needs to be. What the SEC has done instead is taken steps to ensure or really encourage activists to hijack the proxy ballot and divert time, resources, and attention from the underlying business in which Main Street is investing.
And I would argue that that in and of itself is a threat to the general bottom line and overall performance of those shares for their shareholders. I'm grateful to each of you for coming here to speak today. As we continue this important work on the committee, I hope we can ensure the well-being of investors remains the chief focus of our capital markets. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.